with the next Speaker of the House the next time the Democrats take it. Hakeem
The
Jeffries.
threat right now in this country to the American people are extreme MAGA Republicans. That's the threat. That's the problem. That's the crisis that we confront. Extreme MAGA Republicans. Why? They are extreme on reproductive freedom. The threat.
Now, folks, that is Hakeem Jeffries. He is reputed to be the next person to be the Speaker of the House the next time the Democrats take it. And folks, don't count your chickens on November. The Democrats could easily prevail in November. Easily prevail. We're going to go through a bunch of things today. We'll tell you why that is. Anyway, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about AOC if we can get to it. We're going to tell you about the Mick Mulvaney phenomenon. Talk about the new quote-unquote conservative on The View. A bunch of other things, all sort of similar nonsense that the political environment in which we find ourselves. So welcome to GAMcast for July 28th, 2022. It is a brutally humid and hot day in Atlanta. I know this because I had to be up and I had to be in court this morning in Cobb County. And, you know, Cobb County is basically Newt Gingrich's old district. It now has a Democrat congressperson. And this morning, the Cobb County State Court, at least, has instituted a mask mandate again. So unbeknownst to me, I got there. They had a whole pack there for you to take, and they are cloth masks. Now, I'm not used to being up there for the criminal calendar on a Thursday. Normally, I go up on Tuesday, but Thursday apparently is a big day for these people. And we were packed in there like sardines. Luckily, lawyers get a little bit of expedited treatment, so I was able to get in and out. But, folks, they're not kidding around about this stuff. They're coming back. I don't know what the basis for the mask mandate is, but, you know, we've learned nothing. We've taught the politicians nothing, so just don't count on anything changing. We say this all the time. It's not where you are, it's where you're headed, right? We are in a bad place, continuing to head down the bad path. Hakeem Jeffries, let's get to that. Folks, he said extreme MAGA Republicans, and I understand that's the talking point, but let me break that down for you, folks. The person who is very high up in the Democrat, and by the way, speaking of which, I've noticed this recently. I've been thinking about this, and I don't know the answer. It's not a rhetorical question. Why is it so many people that have speech disabilities rise in the Democrat Party? I mean, think about how many people on MSNBC, how many people like Hakeem Jeffries, the people that have these speaking impediments, and then they just rise. And I'm not saying that if you have a speech impediment, you shouldn't be able to overcome it. I'm not saying any of that. There's something weird going on about that. I mean, there's something not right about Hakeem Jeffries in addition to the way that he speaks. But yet they, put him in charge and up the ranks he goes. But anyway, folks, basically it's Republicans. And at the end of the day, that's what they think. They literally think that if it just weren't for all these Republicans, and don't let them fool you, folks. We're going to go through all this, and they've got an environment where, one, they are against every single solitary Republican out there. They have two tiers of justice. Yes, we're going to get to Merrick Garland saying that he enforces justice blindly. What a joke. I mean, I'm not even so angry that he said it. I'm angry that he's getting away with it, that he just gets to say it. But again, we talk about this all the time, folks. We don't live in the same world that they do. In their world, they get to say something. If you say it, it is. Of course, if you're a Republican, you don't get to do that. But anyway, I thought it was pretty important that the number two man in the House leadership over there says Republicans are the enemy, and nobody seems to care or say anything about it. And part of the reason that we see that is the media is completely consumed with, we've got over a decade or longer of them seeing their job as in line with the Democrats. Okay, and they don't think of, they honestly, folks, you have to understand this. If you put them to a lie detector test, they would pass. Because they don't believe they're doing that. What they really believe is, well, of course there's no other way to think but the Democrat Party. Everything they say, of course. Now, what I can't understand is how they don't understand, well, wait a minute, the Democrat Party could define what a woman was less than 10 years ago. Now they can't. Like, they didn't believe in some of this stuff that they believe in now. Like, how do you just continue to go with the shift and it's okay? I don't know how they reconcile that in their mind. But I assure you, they now think there aren't two sides. There's the Democrats, and then anyone who Democrats disagrees with the Democrats are imbeciles and evil, or both. right? That's what they think. So to them, this is just the only responsible thing you can do in terms of journalism. And the January 6th committee is probably the best example that you can give yourself, right? And in other words, we talked about this before, but when the January 6th committee started, right, you could advance an argument. It wasn't a great argument, but you could advance an argument of like, look, you know what? We've got to have this committee. I understand why the Republicans are reluctant because they don't, it kind of was their people that was doing it, and they don't want to be a part of that. So I understand, but by golly, we just got to do it. So, let's just suck it up. It's an all-time unique thing. Let's have a January 6th. By gosh, we're going to do it. And so you go do it, and then you could have gone out there, and you could have been honorable, and you could have kept it narrowly tailored to focusing on January 6th. You could have been honorable with people in terms of subpoenas and things like that. You could have done a lot of things, right? You could have yourself, all right, now, folks, when we close this thing down at night, we're going to sit here for an hour. We're going to think of the toughest Republican questions that are real Republican. Liz, Adam, be quiet. We know you're not Republican. Come on. We owe this to the American people. We're going to come up. We're going to pretend for an hour that we're Republicans, or maybe just do you know any? You don't know any Republicans? Okay, well, somehow we're going to come up with a way to ask questions that Republicans might ask. They could have done that. Now, what we've seen is a demonstration. They did the opposite. They started down an evil path, and they have just continued to go down that path. As, of course, the founders and anybody with common sense would know would happen, right? Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So they got away with it, and then that's what happens. You go further down the path. You start, I'm going to subpoena members of Congress. I remember not that long ago, people would have fallen over, if they were told that. Justice would have been like, what? Merrick Garland would have been like, I thought you just said they subpoenaed a member of Congress. What? This is crazy. Crazy talk. No, sir. They literally subpoenaed members of Congress. They literally want their texts. Sir, they say the president doesn't have executive privilege. They say the person who takes over, like, what? Well, then there's no executive privilege at all because somebody's going along. All of these things that they've just gone through and nothing's happened. And so they continue to go down this path. And so the latest example of this, you may not think it's much, folks, but this is why you listen to this podcast, right? Because I watch all this stuff. It all goes through my feed, and I assure you, you get every day here in less than 40 minutes. And today, I'm still got this cold. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I didn't get as much sleep as I'm used to getting last night, but I'm still not quite over this daggum cold. It's getting on my nerves. But anyway, so this is Adam Kinzinger, who, folks, if you're watching on the YouTubes and the Rumbles, and I hope you are, this guy does not look well. I'm not just throwing this out there. He looks like he's got some serious psychological issues. I don't know if I know he's a prior military guy. Maybe he has some sort of military thing, or, I'm sure he's very upset. Like, if we get to it, John Kasich here in a minute. These are people that were once, Kinzinger was never a prominent member of the Republican Party. Kasich actually was. And I understand their brand of Republicanism is not going to be prominent. It's not going to lead. It's not going to continue. It'll always be out there because, as we say all the time, the Republican Party's a big tent. They're welcome. You don't see Rand Paul out there grabbing his marbles and going and crying to the left-wing media and saying bad things about Republicans, do you? No. He understands, and listen, folks, you all know this. I worship Rand Paul. I think I don't worship anybody, you know what I mean, but I think he's great. That's exactly, his voting record, my voting record would look very similar. I would be voting against all this military garbage, all this spying. You know this, right? I'm a constitutionalist down the line, and that's what libertarians look like. But Rand Paul doesn't, you don't see him screaming and crying about the fact that his wing of Republicanism isn't dominant. It's not. If I were a Republican, which I'm not, I've never been registered as a Republican, but if I were a registered Republican and I went out there, my brand of stuff wouldn't be very popular at all, right? Just because I believe in the Constitution, but there are a lot of things I wouldn't do that they do. But I digress. Anyway, so Adam Kinzinger, I don't know if he's upset, what his deal is. You can tell he's not a well person, because you can just see it on his face. Setting that aside, you can look at the way he reacts to the fact that people don't want him to represent the district because he went and took maybe he thinks it's a principled decision to vote to impeach the President of the United States. Maybe he thinks it's a principled thing to go be on a January 6th witch hunt communist committee. I don't. I'm done. Once I hear that, we're done. That's it. I'm never going to vote for you again. I'm not going to give you any money. I'm going to work to get you out of office. Now, if it's such a principled thing, just go on about your business. And again, just to show you how petty he is, he's going to make a lot of money, probably get a book deal, He's going to get a position somewhere. He's going to be fine. So it's not like he's really taking a position for which he's going to really suffer. But anyway, he had this to say recently on Jake Tapper. Take a listen.
But it's important work for the American people, and we're happy to do it.
What is the latest on the Secret Service? Because there were a whole bunch of whispers we heard from people near the Secret Service saying that they would be willing to testify about that story, about whether or not then Deputy Chief of Staff Tony Ornato told Cassidy Hutchinson that story about Trump lunging in the SUV. But my understanding, I think you told CNN that talks had completely broken down and they weren't cooperating anymore, those 3 Secret Service agents, the gentleman that was the actual Secret Service agent, Ornato, and the guy that drove the SUV. What's the status?
Oh, so what's the status here? So Jake acts like he's being a journalist. What's the status of these people that claim they were going to contradict Cassidy Hutchinson? And they decided to come forward and you were in talks with them. What's going on here? Now, folks, you basically are up to speed. So we all know Cassidy Hutchinson lied. It's easily a lie. I mean, the idea that anybody would grab the president, the idea that the president would then lunge at people, the fact that he would lunge in an SUV or a limo. If you've ever been in either one of these cars, okay, and I understand the president is he's a little bit taller than I am. I think he's 6'2". Even at that height, there's no way you can reach it. I mean, if you literally lunged like a rattlesnake, you couldn't make it. If you just dove as far, it's all completely nonsense. We all know it's nonsense. Now, here's the problem. What's going on? Now, understand if you get an answer, right, a journalist would follow up that answer. Notice what Tapper does when he gets an answer. So, folks, I mean, we know what the truth could be. The truth could be what Kinzinger's about ready to tell you. It also could be the January 6th committee conveniently decided, A, we're not going to invite them, or B, we'll reach out to them, and we'll keep putting so many conditions on things that they won't come. Anyway, let's take a listen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pattern that we see, which is through anonymous sources, things are questioned at the committee. Through anonymous sources, they say they're willing to come in and give counter evidence, and then they never do because we require them to be under oath. So as of now, we've not talked to these Secret Service agents. They've lawyered up, which is their right to do. And, we'll go from there. The attorneys are engaging to figure out what's next. But, that's, again, the standard kind of Trump operation pattern is through anonymous.
Now, a bunch of things going on there that bother me. So we've not talked to him. Well, have you talked to him or not talked to him? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. What he means is that they haven't come to speak before the committee. Okay? Lawyers are working it out. Now, again, Tapper here, who got this strange look on his face. We've paused it here on the YouTubes and the Rumbles if you're watching it there. And he acts like, it's interesting stuff here, right? Follow-up question. What are the conditions the lawyers have? What are they saying? What do they want on the other side? What's their conditions? That would be journalism, folks. You're not going to get any of that. And I want you to understand this. You've got people who are in the Secret Service. These are people who work for the government. Doesn't matter who the president is. They protected Obama. They protected Trump. Now they're protecting Biden, right? He's got to go after these people and say, oh, well, now that you have to be under oath, he's calling them liars, folks. Okay? You okay with that? Anyway, let's see what Tapper says.
Sources or through whisper campaigns try to discredit people.
Oh, and by the way, yeah, they're all pro-Trump. Because, the Secret Service, I mean, they were pro-Trump people.
Under oath. And Cassidy Hutchinson has shown she is a brave American woman. And I think people like her, Sarah Matthews, Caroline Edwards will go down in history as having more courage than, frankly, almost every man in the Republican Party combined.
More courage than almost every man in the GOP combined. More courage than almost every man in the GOP combined. Okay, folks, because of the freaking, Nazis out there in the big tech world, I'm not going to pull up the Jack Nicholson from As Good As It Gets. Where do you learn to talk like that? But where do you learn to talk like that? This is not politics, folks. This is not a flipping game, Kinzinger. Now think about that. This is a literal Nazi who's running a fascist show trial. And he has the nerve to get on TV, lie about people that would contradict his witnesses, right? Then take a pot shot at all Republican men combined. Remember, we just covered Cassidy Hutchinson yesterday, right? Remember I told you that there have now texts that have leaked out, right, that show that she didn't believe any of this January 6th committee, but then when they hauled her up, she did what any wise person would do. Okay, now let's see what Jake Tapper does after he's allowed Kinzinger to literally smear Secret Service, all Republican men, by the way, out there, right, to say that they're lying. I mean, all this smear job this guy's done. Let's see what Tapper does.
Your vice chair of the committee, Liz Cheney, told me.
Well, let me back it up so you can hear
it. Combined.
Your vice chair.
What are you, Dr. Evil? That's it. There's no follow-up at all, folks. I literally had 4 or 5 follow-ups. Let's go on about Liz Cheney, your vice chair.
Told me on Sunday that the committee is prepared to consider subpoenaing Ginny Thomas, the wife of the Supreme Court Justice.
Now let's move on to Ginny Thomas. Let's be a racist and go attack a judge, his wife, because he's black. I mean, this is just pathetic. So, folks, this is the type of pathetic thing. This is the environment we've created, all right? And it's unfortunate for those of you who have kids, younger family members coming into this world. This is not a good world they're coming into. Listen, is America as it stands now better than, a lot of places in Africa or South America and places in the world that are terrible? Sure. Right. Is it the America you grew up in? Not one chance. Not at all. And not going to be anywhere close to that. And part of it are people like Kasich. Now, this is a guy who was the governor of Ohio. I think he was part of the original Newt Gingrich contract with America. He's got lovely bona fides as a conservative. And again, he ran. Turns out the Republican Party did not want his brand of Republicanism, whatever you want to call it, which has happened to many people in time. It once happened to Ronald Reagan. Right? I mean, when Reagan was running and the Nixonians, the sort of country club Republicans who were not nearly as constitutionalists as Republicans are today, they didn't want anything to do with Reagan. I mean, I could sit here and talk all for hours about how Reagan transformed the Republican Party, and the Republican Party to this day battles back and forth. The so-called conservative wing will get control of the party for a while, and then that wing will get kind of pushed out, and the Herbert Walker, country club Republican will get power, and they battle back and forth. Right, this is something that's gone on, and so people like Kasich aren't unique in that they thought they were going to go far and wide, and they didn't. They're unique in that they go out there and they decide to become useful idiots for the other side to knock down the Republican Party and the country by extension. And here's what makes me so irksome about these people is that they look us in the eye like they're the virtuous ones. Listen, just go take your tens of millions of dollars and your fame, Kasich, right? And go play golf on your golf course and drink your champagne and just stop with this, you're virtuous, because I know you're not. But anyway, here's Kasich talking about Trump's speech yesterday or the day before yesterday. He went to Washington. He gave his speech. I didn't cover it because you don't need to know about it. We cover the most important things you need to know. You don't need to know that Trump gave a speech in Washington talking about crime is bad and about how Joe Biden's screwing everything up, right, and basically extolling Donald Trump. Nothing to hear there. But here is something you do want to hear. Take a look at Kasich's viewpoint of the speech.
It's a vulnerability the Democrats have, which is crime across our country, with the shootings and everything else. It's an issue. So is the issue with the border. So what he did is he hit on these vulnerabilities that the Democrats have, but at the same time, there wasn't any hope at all in this speech. He's going to fix all this with stop and frisk. If you go through the whole talk, it's one thing to point out the vulnerabilities that the other folks have, but if you don't leave people with some sense of hope, I didn't hear that yesterday. I heard very dark message about our country. It's not the best of us, and we need to rekindle the spirit of our country. Just winning another election doesn't get that done if people aren't brought together, and I didn't hear anything about hope in his speech yesterday.
All right, folks, I'm not going to continue it further other than just what I've already said. I mean, he's a useful idiot. I don't want to hear about a bunch of platitudinal nonsense that somebody's supposed to say about hope and change and all that stuff. So here's, if you're looking at the screen, I'm going to read it, a tweet from the President of the United States yesterday, 8/18, probably written by Ron Klain or Susan Rice or somebody else in his cabinet. But anyway, we've now hit more than 6 straight weeks of declines, making this the fastest drop in gas prices in over a decade. You see, so if you're worried about the price of gas, I bought gas this morning. I was mortified at what I paid, but it is what it is. Folks, I can afford it. Whatever I see, that kind of stuff. I mean, look, it's good to be at a point in your life where, when you get older, this one thing that people in America for some reason just refuse to believe. I've never understood why older Americans get free stuff or get reduced stuff, because frankly, the older you get, the more money you had. I mean, if you go back in my lifetime and basically every American's lifetime, and you look at your wealth, how wealthy you are, it's basically a straight hockey stick from low down at the bottom, and then basically just goes straight up towards you. Each year you become wealthier and wealthier. And I'm at a point now where, I noticed the price just because I remember when Trump left office, when I bought it, it was $1.99. So now I have a comparison point. But, when I think about what I'm paying, it's just exorbitant. When I see my power bill and my gas bill come, they're out of line with what they should be. The electric bill I can sort of understand because we're in a triple La Nina, and so it's going to be one of those hot summers. I get that, but the gas bill is still like $50-$60. I barely ever take a shower at this house, and I don't cook that much here, so I don't know how could I be burning through that. Normally would be $20 this time of year. So anyway, when you think about those kinds of things, I mean, this stuff really matters, and I say this all the time. But the Biden White House, it's all because of this environment that he can get away with this. So, all right, let's assume for the sake of the argument it's true that prices have been going down. Well, we're not imbeciles, Biden. So they've gone down for 6 straight weeks. That's because they got so flipping high in the first flipping place, right? And now you're gonna brag the fastest drop in gas prices in over a decade. Not to mention, so now you've established the record. You've established that you're responsible. So when they start going back up, then I'm free to hold you to blame, right? These people can't play one-dimensional chess, much less three-dimensional chess. But anyway, we shall see. Folks, gas prices are rising, and they will never come back down again. Okay, they will not. And here's why they will not. It came out, I believe, late yesterday, early this morning, that Joe Manchin has now caved and has agreed to a pared down Build Back Better. Now they're calling it something else like, Lower Inflation Act of 2022 or some idiotic thing. But basically, folks, they're going to be spending more money. So, they're going to continue to spend money because they haven't learned their lesson. As you spend money, that's going to make the inflationary pressures go up, right? And there is no reversal in their policies on gas. And it doesn't look like you're going to get a reversal, right? So by the time you get a reversal, which you might get if you get a Republican in office in 2024, then it's going to be 2025, January 20th, before that person takes power. It's going to take them a while, about a year, to get new policies. You're looking at 2025. By that point, just the normal inflation will have enough cushion that even if they go back down, they'll still be as high as they are now. So you might as well get used to that. But again, the fact that the president tweets something like this shows you that they continue to be, and don't fall for the people that say they're out of touch. They're not out of touch. They're not out of touch. They were never in touch, right? They just don't have enough respect for us to communicate to us as if we've got any brains. One other quick thing before we get to the next bite I've got here, and that is this morning it was released that the GDP was negative 0.9, negative 0.9. So, 0.9% negative. Second consecutive quarter of negative growth. We are officially in a recession. So, folks, those of you who are out there and who think Fox, the Fox brand out there is the far right or the MAGA right or real conservative. I've told you before, Fox, you could argue it's center right. I think it's center left. I think it's better, more accurate to say that. I recommend to my friends who are, estranged from leftist politics, they grew up with them. They're Democrats. They like the Democrat Party, but even they have just gotten to the point where this is just beyond ridiculous. If you want to get your news, the closest thing you're going to get to the news, besides listening to programs like this, go to Fox, because Fox is going to give you the left-wing spin that you get anyway. You're just going to hear one more point of view, which would be the non-left-wing point of view. That's all Fox is, right? And the only reason that they're so hated is, one, because you're not allowed to, venture away from the narrative if you're on the left, right? And then they do have some commentators that give you, not the news folks, but I'm talking about commentators that will give you more of a right-wing point of view. But anyway, here is a panel discussing the monkeypox. And I want you to listen, the guy that starts with this, he uses language, but then I want you to watch how quickly he gets reined in on Fox. Take a listen.
As for monkeypox, I think there's a pretty good rule in life. Don't attend gay orgies. When you look at the New England Journal's report of the 528 cases they reviewed.
Ned, come on, man.
It's not about gay. How about not any orgies?
Go look at the New England.
All right, now first and foremost, okay, there's nothing wrong with what he said. He said don't attend orgies, and then the guy, he's not about gay. He's not about gay. No orgies. Okay, but see, here's the problem. What the data shows right now is that it is in the community of gay men. So he's saying if you want to be as safe as humanly statistically possible, then you have to say gay orgies will be the most dangerous, right? Now, did he say it in the most artful fashion? No. But here's the point. Nobody honestly believes at this point that he believes anything that's anti-gay or he's somehow against gay people or any of that. Nobody can establish that, nor do I believe it. If he did, he'd be ostracized. He'd be gone, even on Fox, right? But this goes on for a while. And again, I want you to notice these people that claim, oh, you know, Fox is this right-wing, MAGA, all this stuff. Nothing could be further from the truth. They're not. And this is just more proof of it.
Journal's report that NBC News reported on Friday, in which of the 528 cases they reviewed, 95% were sex between men. I think we actually have to have a serious conversation about where this is coming from. When I'm done, Brad, you can talk. Instead of going crazy and declaring a national pandemic when 3,000 people have it right now, it's insane.
I don't know, man. You don't have to be gay to get monkeypox, and you don't have to be bigoted when you talk about treating something that is...
Now, again, I agree you don't have to be gay to get monkeypox, but that wasn't the question. He said if you want to be safe, this is what you would want to avoid, okay? Just FYI. By the way, you know, the other thing is, how is it bigoted? What did he say that was bigoted, right? And again, that's just the reality of what we live in. And folks, again, I'm not suggesting that he could not have said that more artfully. What I want you to point out here is they could have said, "Hey, you know what? All right, we understand the point you're making, but if you would, could you say that in a fashion so that it's clear to everyone that we're not impugning the gay community? No. You don't have to be bigoted, right? Notice how the default setting is that there's a problem with you if you say something that I don't like, right? And I would note to you it's the two younger people on the panel. There's a blonde here in the middle. Or not actually, the two of them are in the middle, but who basically didn't have much to say. So turns out Alyssa Farah, whatever, I don't know how you pronounce it, has the new gig on The View. So The View is politics for imbeciles, right? And that's just what it is, folks. It's sad but true, all right? And so you come up and basically you watch The View. You are basically about as misinformed as you could possibly be, okay? And it's a sad thing, but people want to watch it. And they turned out that they found that The View does much better ratings when they have a quote-unquote token conservative on there who basically more or less gets beat up by the other panelists, but goes in there and does the job of being the quote-unquote conservative. You'll recall, I think it was Meghan McCain who had that job for quite some time. And so they've now picked out a new quote-unquote conservative. Alyssa Farah, she was in Trump's administration for some time or whatever. And basically now, as I started the show, one of the themes of today's show is how you've created this environment for people to come out and trash Trump. So we proved yesterday that Cassidy Hutchinson is one of these persons that came out and decides, oh my God, there's this whole environment out here. I can either be a communist and join the Democrat Party, or option B, I can be a part of this other group of people, so-called Lincoln Project type of people, who are anti the Republican Party. We're not Democrats, mind you. We might even call ourselves conservatives, right? What her name is, Navarro, or whatever, that other lady, I think she's also on The View, right? But we get to make a lot of money pretending that we're conservative, but then saying very anti-conservative things. So here's her talking about the recent vote on gay marriage. Take a listen, see if this person sounds remotely conservative to you.
I had HIV. It was difficult for me to accept.
We're not going to listen to the ad. You're going to have to listen to me. So obviously, there's lots of reasons to be against the recent bill. One, it's virtue signaling. Two, it's a waste of time. But three, most importantly, the House has no power to regulate marriage. But anyway, here's what she had to say.
Undetectable. That's when the amount of virus...
Come on. I've skipped the ad 4
serious
times
side
now.
effects can occur.
I think the Republican party's they're on the wrong side of this. Like, on the one hand, I'm pleased that the House was able to pass codifying marriage equality into law, but the number of Republicans that were against it, it's 2022. This is the easiest issue. If for 71% of Americans are for marriage equality,
71% of people are for it. In fact, now, folks, I got to be honest. When that number came out of her face, I would have thought it was closer to 90 or something. I mean, when you say it like that, I'm surprised it got 71. And at this point, gay marriage was never a big deal for me one way or the other. I never really cared much about it. But notice how nothing conservative is going to come out of her face. Not, well, but the House has no authority to do this. We've proven this. In fact, it was the Democrats, when they controlled the House and controlled the presidency, who floated up the Defense of Marriage Act up to the Supreme Court to say, yeah, you can't. What do you do? You can't regulate this. That's up to the states, right? I mean, but anyway, let's.
% of young people Republicans under 30 are also for it. I bet the number's even bigger than that. We have lived in a world where that's all we know. Our friends are married.
She's 33. Okay, 33.
They have kids.
Well, some of your friends in the party are actually also gay folks.
Well, exactly, and that's what it's astounding to me. If there was one message I could deliver to my fellow Republicans, this should be the easiest vote you'll ever take.
It's all
you're
politics.
standing with
That's
family.
why we're doing
you're
it, though.
standing with
Anyway, so folks, she's not going to help the ratings because they don't really understand that what you need is genuine conflict in order to people to really want to tune in. To have somebody have a token on and say, yes, I too do not like what the Republicans have to say, and I too say to my fellow Republican, I'm not really a Republican, but I'm pretending one on TV. Yeah, that's not going to go anywhere. But anyway, just so you're up to date, The View has no punching bag out there. So a lot of people covered Merrick Garland saying this recently, and so I guess I feel sort of duty bound to cover it as well. Came up in the context of me wanting to introduce you to this guy, Mick Mulvaney, who I'm going to introduce you to in a moment. But anyway, take a listen to Merrick Garland, who, by the way, folks, I want you to know, when he was on the Court of Appeals and he was tabbed by Obama to be a so-called moderate pick for the Supreme Court in the Scalia seat, and, McConnell, the turtle, said, nope, we're not taking a vote, ain't going to happen. He had a reputation for being not moderate. He was definitely a leftist, but he had a reputation for being a man of principle and honor, and he's basically trashed that. But here he is talking to Lester Holt, a non-journalist masquerading, pretending to be a journalist. Take a listen.
You said in no uncertain terms the other day that no one is above the law. Yeah. That said, the indictment of a former president, of perhaps candidate for president, would arguably tear the country apart. Is that your concern as you make your decision down the road here? Do you have to think about things like that?
Look, we pursue justice without fear or favor. We intend to hold anyone who is criminally responsible for the events surrounding January 6th, for any attempt to interfere with the lawful transfer of power from one administration to another, accountable. That's what we do. We don't pay any attention to other issues with respect to that.
So if Donald Trump were to become a candidate for president again, that would not change your schedule or how you move forward or don't move forward?
Say again that we will hold accountable anyone who is criminally responsible for attempting to interfere with the legitimate, lawful transfer of power from one administration to the next.
A couple things to say here. First and foremost, Lester Holt doesn't ask any real questions. There's nobody out there that thinks that no Republican thinks that people are above the law. The only people that think that people are above the law are Democrats, which they show all the time. Now, when his Department of Justice came on, he quickly dropped lawsuits or investigations into people in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York having to do with the COVID deaths and all that stuff. The idea that he produces people based on justice without fear or favor, give me a break. All right, now, here's the other thing. Anybody who interfered with the peaceful transfer or the lawful transfer of power, folks, that's called politics. If you did it legally, if you went to the Electoral College and to object legally, there's nothing wrong with that. So a lot of people are giving him a lot of, look at, this is good he said this, when he doesn't deserve anything of the kind. Not to mention his whole administration of justice at the DOJ is a complete joke. So let's get to Mulvaney real quickly. Here he is talking about what the Attorney General had to say. Take a listen.
Mr. Mulvaney, I'm wondering what you make of what Attorney General Garland had to say tonight. Do you think he offered any more insight into whether the Justice Department might indict the former president?
Not really. By the way, Anderson, thanks for having me. I was very, very pleased with what he said. I think most Americans would be, that chief law enforcement officer of the United States.
You're impressed with what he said. I could care less what he said. People can say, I could say I'm Jesus Christ. It doesn't make it so. I want to see what he does. And we see what he's done. We see what he's done to the January 6th defendants who were languishing in jail, no trial, no exchange of evidence. Some of them getting their 15, 20 years for going in and taking a selfie at the Capitol. Right, we see him he's not gone after Hunter Biden. It's clearly politicized justice out there. And again, Mulvaney worked for Trump. So again, the Mulvaney syndrome. It's a lot of these syndromes. A lot of these people have now realized it's profitable to go anti-Trump. He continues.
Said they were going to go about things deliberately and without concern for politics. That's what I would want them to say on any particular investigation into any crime committed possibly by any person in the country.
There's this idea out there that somehow Trump is going to get away because he's running for office. Only Republicans do that, folks. I don't know where the lefties come up with this idea. And again, it's really kind of amusing. You got the January 6th committee not producing any evidence, but then putting pressure on the DOJ. And the whole community here is putting pressure on the DOJ to go after Trump. And if they go after Trump and they get him, all that's going to do is make DeSantis or somebody else more powerful. So I don't really understand what in the world they're doing. But listen, this is who Mulvaney is. Take a listen to him talking about the January 6th stuff now. And he used to work with Mark Meadows, folks. Okay, again, he was at OMB and was Trump's chief of staff for quite some time. Take a listen.
A tweet from somebody who was there. There's no hard evidence of that yet. We're unlikely to get Mark Meadows' side of the story because it looks like he's not going to testify. And I think that's unfortunate. But if you have a chief of staff who's detached, who's sitting on the sofa all day, tweeting while Rome burns, that is a sign of a broken White House. And while the president is ultimately responsible for his own actions and the president's ultimately responsible for the people that he hires, the chief of staff has a great deal to do when it comes to the responsibility for how a West Wing is run.
Mick.
Now, so again, just so you understand, Mick Mulvaney, very powerful guy in Trump world, former, Trumpster. And he's out there. You've now heard him on CNN twice. That's his job. Okay, he's just John Kasich, Part Deux. He's all these people that they go out there. Now I want you to notice. I want you to tell me where in the right wing or conservative environment do you have people from the other side that come over and do this, right? That should tell you something, folks. You don't see it. I mean, you occasionally see people, but they're clearly doing it for principle. You see people like Dershowitz or Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard's not wealthy and powerful now. Nobody's giving her any gig. Dershowitz didn't get invited to any more parties. He get invited to less. Those people are doing it because they're standing up for something. These other people, they know what to say. They're playing the game. And again, just one more sign that our country's headed in the wrong direction. And the final thing I'll leave you with today, we don't do a lot of AOC, really, because frankly, at this point, it's just she's become a character of herself. She's such a joke. But I did think you'd want to know about this. So state senator who shares a building and a district with her, they both represent Queens, AOC in the feds, this woman here in the New York, recently took to social media to criticize Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for not adequately being present in her district. Anyway, so long and short of it is, she says, maybe if you spent more time in your office and with your team, you'd know what goes on. Just saying it would be nice if you breathed our air. So as an employer, what happens with the staffer who said this? So anyway, they're having a little bit of a cat fight out there about it. But the point of the story is AOC doesn't represent Queens. And anybody that paid attention would know that she doesn't represent Queens. She represents Twitch and Twitter and social media. I mean, let me see if I can find it here real quickly. How many followers she's got now? Oh, wow, 13.2 million and growing, right? That's what politics have become. She literally just burst on the scene a couple of years ago, folks. And now the way you rise in Democrat politics and in political circles these days, you're left wing, you promote socialism, you go out and you get people all hyped up and emotionalized. You don't actually do any real work. You don't do anything to make the country better. That's how you get ahead. Now, if that's what you're encouraging, folks, what do you think you're getting? Anyway, you are now all caught up to date on the news of the day. And if you enjoyed this live stream, I hope you tune back in tomorrow.